Hi, it's Kim Schofield here with another video on my YouTube channel. Today I am sharing a project that I created for the Crafters Workshop. During this video I'm going to create an art journal page using products from the Crafters Workshop. So we're going to get started with the supplies that we need. I am using some paint from Dina Wakley, stencils from the Crafters Workshop as I mentioned. That was a little sneak peek of a online class I have coming up in December. You can visit my blog or follow my blog to get more information on that. So I am using a beautiful stamp set here from Catherine Scanlon, and she hand draws these images, and I love them, and they're a great size for art journaling. So I have a page that I've taken out of a small Dilutions art journal, and that's what I'm starting with, and I'm working on my nonstick craft sheet. The mushrooms were just stamped on a manila tag and colored with Copic markers, and we'll cut that out later. You can see my stencils are well loved. I don't clean them often, so I hope that doesn't bother you. So I'm going to start by putting some paint out on my nonstick craft sheet, and then I'm going to get to work on first adding some white gesso to the art journal page. And the reason that I'm doing that is that the gesso gives the paper or allows the paint to grab onto the paper instead of soaking into it. So this gives you, the drying time will take slightly longer with gesso. You'll also be able to remove color easier, and gesso is just, if you're using paint, is what you're going to want to put on your page first. So I'm putting some of the blue kind of willy-nilly all over the page. And then I'm going to put down my first stencil and remove some of the color using a baby wipe. So this is one of my favorite techniques for adding design to the background of a page. You can see it's really quick and easy. You can even use a baby wipe to apply paint if you wanted to. Now I'm going to dry this. I'm going to dry between each layer actually with my heat gun, because when I go on to my next layer, I don't want to smear the first layer. So I'm using a little bit darker blue, another blue color. This is turquoise, and I'm using a makeup sponge to pick up the color and pounce that through the stencil. To make sure you get a clean line when you're using a makeup sponge, make sure that you don't have a lot of paint on the sponge, and that will give you a real clean line. So I'm kind of picking a little, working in small areas and picking up just a little bit of paint each time. And so this is my second layer going over the top of that honeycomb design, and I'll dry that before I move on to my third and last color for the background. And this is a darker blue, and the reason I'm staying within this the blue family is because this is my background, and so because I have this mushrooms as my focal point image, and I'm going to add a sentiment in the center here. I don't want to have a very busy background with a lot of different colors. So while I have a lot of texture from the different designs from the stencils, I'm not going to have a ton of color in the background. I'll leave that, the extra color there for my focal point image. So I'm going to clean all that extra paint up off my craft sheet with a baby wipe, and again dry this next layer to make sure my paint is completely dry before I go on to the next step. So now I'm going to add some stamping with this number stamp from Wendy Vecchi. And I'm using some gray archival ink. This is also from Wendy Vecchi. This is called Watering Can. And I really like the look of the gray on top of the blue instead of going for a darker black color. My quote that's going to be in the center there is going to be in black. And so I didn't want to have so much of that around the page. So I thought that gray was a great neutral. So now I've gone ahead and cut out the mushroom image and decided where I wanted it on my page. And then I used this manila tag kind of as a frame, and I just used a pencil and traced around it so I would know where I'd want to put the sentiment. So now I'm going to come in with some gesso. I'll be a little bit watered down. I've got a little bit of water on my brush, because I want to knock that design back a little bit within that rectangle area. And that's so when I add my quote or my sentiment, it will stand out better being on a little bit lighter background. So now I'm going to be using two alphabet stamp sets, one from Tim Holtz and one from Concord & Ninth. And I am holding down my paper with a piece of painter's tape just so that it doesn't move around. And I'm going to give myself some guidelines for where I want those letters to sit. And this will be easier than trying to eyeball it and try to keep a straight line. I have a tendency to write on a slant, and if I didn't give myself some lines, I would stamp in a slant as well. You can also use the grid lines on a stamp block to keep your letters straight as well. So I'm using black archival ink because I am stamping on top of paint, and that is your best option for on top of paint versus a dye-based ink. And now this Concord & Ninth stamp set, is great because it's script letters that you can line up next to each other that looks like it's all one word. It all goes together, so it's pretty cool. This is the first time I'm using it, and I love it. It was very easy to line all the letters up, and it just looks seamless. You can't even tell. And then I'm going to show you how I did have a little mistake. I'm going to show you how I fixed that in just a second. But you can see how easy this is to line those up on the grid line that I created, and even with the stamp set. So that's where it didn't really line up very well. So I'm just using a Copic marker. This is a thin line marker to just color in that area, and once I finish doing that, you can't even tell that I didn't get that perfectly lined up. So now here's my entire quote, which also came from Catherine Scanlon. It was off of a project that I saw of hers on Pinterest. I think it's great. Do small things with great love. So I'm going over the letters that Tim Holtz stamp set kind of as a distress look to the letters, and I wanted a solid black. So I'm just using a marker to color in those areas so that it doesn't have that kind of broken look in the letters. And this can also allow me to fix any spots where I didn't stamp very solidly, and I can just color those in. Now I am drying this very well because I'm going to erase those pencil lines that I created. And if the archival ink is not completely dry, I'm going to end up smearing it and have a big black mess on my paper, and I didn't want to have that. So you want to dry that ink completely before you do any erasing. So now I wanted to add some little splotty dots. So I'm taking some green paint, watering it down, and taking a small brush and just adding some little splots all over the piece. And this is just in a green color, so these little dots are not super, they don't stand out. It's not a huge contrast, but it's just a little more visual interest in the background. And again, I'm going to dry that completely before I move on. So now, because I love brown, I'm adding brown to, I add brown really to the edges of anything and everything. So I'm using Gathered Twigs Distress ink to do that. This is a great color. I love it. It's one of my favorite brown colors to use. And I'm just using a small blending tool to go around the edges to do that. And I added some foam tape to the back of my mushroom piece. And I'm going to go ahead and place that onto my page. And now I'm going to use a food ball marker and a ruler to trace a frame around that sentiment. And I've done kind of a faint pencil line, so I can kind of line that up again, but going around the letters there, some of those letters went outside of the pencil frame that I had made, but that's okay. I'm just going to go with it and just leave those letters popping outside of the frame, which is fine. So I'm just going to create that box, tracing around on all four sides. So now you can see I added a double line there and a little bit of doodles. And now I'm going to add some butterflies from the Wendy Vecchi Matte Mini collection. These have a whole bunch of butterflies, and I'm using some black archival to color them. That might seem a weird color, but I kind of wanted the butterflies to look like a shadow instead of having color added to them. And then I'm going to attach those with glossy accents because that's a nice strong glue that'll work well on top of the paint. And that pretty much finishes up the project for today. Thank you so much. I hope you enjoyed the project. Please see the Crafters Workshop blog for a full supply list, or look in the description below. And thanks so much. Enjoy and happy crafting.